headliners, the newsmakers, the political scene, and government issues. These should be our concern. And we're taking you at the forefront. Jimeno. Join me at the forefront as we zero in and discuss the details of some of the most pressing national issues that our country faces. Secretary Leo Cacdac has finally been confirmed on August 22 as the Secretary of the Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW. While his past career in government service focused on local labor matters, his challenge with DMW expanded to the implementation of policies and having to regulate, manage, and monitor overseas employment, as well as the reintegration of OFWs when they come back to the Philippines. It is imperative, therefore, for the DMW to have sustainable programs to perform its mandate. With Secretary Hans at the helm, what improvements will DMW do to protect the rights of Filipino migrant workers? Gracing today's program is the newly appointed DMW Secretary, Leo Cacdac. Welcome, Secretary Hans.
Morning, Karen, and to your televiewers, good morning.
Congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
Did your appointment come as a surprise to you?
Well, I'd say it was definitely an honor when I was offered the job, and of course, a breathtaking opportunity. I would put it that way, from the president, by the president, and of course, a privilege to serve under his administration, and always a continuing honor to serve our dear OFWs and OFW families.
Were you ever worried at some point that you were going to be bypassed by the Commission on Appointments?
Well, first of all, as lawyers, it's always our sacred duty to honor the Constitution. And I've always been, should I say, overwhelmed or at least humbled by the proceedings before the Congress, before our constitutional processes. So for me, it was more of in compliance, in obeisance of the constitutional procedure. Of course, one can get nervous, right, in those proceedings under the spotlights. But always, I knew it was in compliance and fulfillment of a sacred duty. And I was, again, privileged to take part in that process.
But as a lawyer, and you've been in government service for a long time, you also know that politics can come into play. So did you ever worry that, politically someone might try to get that position or would favor someone else, and then therefore someone else would get appointed?
Yeah, I think politics, even when I was head of a few various agencies in government, there's always a political side or nature to our work. By political, I mean participating in the representative processes and in dealing with other government officials and our constituencies. So for me, it's par for the course. It's always natural to have to go through a process of selection, to have to earn the opportunity or the privilege to serve a higher office. So for me, again, it was always part of the whole process, and again, an honor to take part in that process. Every time I'm in the Senate or in the House, facing representatives of our people, it's always a very humbling experience for me, and always a duty, an obligation to answer for the decisions I've made in the past, and the efforts that I will undertake in the future when I serve this higher office. So it was all really just part of me, part of an overwhelming, I should say, and a privilege to take part.
Assuming you were not appointed or confirmed by the Commission on Appointments, who do you think would be fit for this role as Secretary of the Department of Migrant Workers?
I think there would be many others who could always in government there are many others who can share or can fulfill the responsibilities in various posts in government. But always I always go back to the opportunity laid before me by the president, and once again, it's time at this point. So what I'm thinking of is it's all time to roll up our sleeves and continue the work that we're doing under the Bagong Pilipinas, the program of economic and social transformation of the president.
Okay, does any particular person come into mind? Like, would you say, for example, OWA Administrator, Chief Administrator Arnell Ignasio would have been also fit for the role?
Well, there are always the OWA Administrator and other government officials who have, especially those who have been officials under labor management, migration management, will always be part of the names or the people who could be considered. But again, it's a presidential prerogative. I don't mean, of course, to look into or get into the presidential prerogative, but always there will always be others, government officials or those in the private sector, in any government post, who deserve to be considered.
Well, the creation of the Department of Migrant Workers came in 2021, and this must have been a signal as well as to how important this sector is. Can you give us an idea currently, how many migrant workers do we have?
Right now, we have around the estimate for the temporary workers, including the undocumented workers, will be around 6 to 7 million. There will be another similar number pertaining to the permanent residents. But for OFWs per se, as defined by law, that would be around 6 to 7 million.
6 to 7 million.
Yeah.
Does that
with
include...
undocumented.
With the undocumented.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so
yes,
that's
sir.
already the total.
Yes, yes.
How much remittances do they bring in to the country? Do you have an idea?
Last year, personal and the formal remittances that run up to about 37 billion, I believe, based on the data, 37 billion US dollars.
Wow.
Yes, so that would include the remittances through the formal channels and the informal channels.
And do you see this number growing in the future?
Well, in 2023, we returned to pre-pandemic level deployments and more. So to give an idea, it was around 2.2, 2.3 prior to the pandemic, and we hit around 2.4 million in 2023. Most notably in the area of sea-based workers, seafarers. We hit an all-time high in terms of deployment of seafarers. Our seafarers, of course, are world-class and continue to be in demand. So that could have been, of course, the trend in deployment last year could been the main reason why remittances were also as high last year. So we're looking at a trend that can continue. However, what we're also seeing now is that the President's economic program has been effective to continue to realize what the law says in terms of overseas employment being more of a choice than a necessity. We have marked growth. The projections this year of up to 7.5% growth in GDP are very notable. We're hitting below 4% in unemployment, and including below 12% in underemployment here in our own country, including lower underemployment for women. And so, to my mind, things are looking up. There's a push and pull in migration, and of forces in migration, and I think the push factor is definitely being addressed by the President's economic team. So in that sense, we're also seeing a reality where there could be fewer or lesser numbers who would opt to go abroad, or a number who would opt to return to invest and to set up businesses and take up employment here in our country.
You used to be the head of the POEA, and given your years of experience dealing with workers, do you see the need for a Department of Migrant Workers? What was really the impetus to have this department?
I think what at least was the motivating factor in setting up the department is simply the major contribution of OFWs and their families to our economy. Also, OFWs and their families are should I say, co-architects of our nation building effort, national development, and this recognition is reflected in the creation of the department in the sense that there is a clear structure. There is a government agency that caters to the needs and aspirations of OFWs and their families. So the president, when our dear Secretary Susan Toots Ople assumed office 2 years ago, gave clear instructions to address the needs, not just the OFWs, but OFW families. And in that sense, it's better to have a department that will encompass the needs of OFWs and their families. So it's clearer, I mean, literally, it's clearer where to run to, where to go. The DMW is a consolidation of various units or agencies in government under one roof, literally. So the POEA had been absorbed. The overseas posts under the DOLE also absorbed. The OWA is an attached agency. The reintegration programs also absorbed. We have the National Maritime Polytechnic, the Seafarer Training Institute in Tacloban, also within our ranks. So it's better, more unified, more integrated in that sense. So our programs sort of converse and are harmonized. So that, for instance, a basic example would be when we have someone who needs help and wants a recruitment agency held accountable in terms of responsibility of an recruitment agency to help that OFW or OFW family, then it's easy to come in with a regulatory power and at the same time to come in at post for the welfare side. It's easy in terms of coordination purposes.
Sorry, can you clarify what that means to come at post from the
post meaning the
side?
overseas posts where our labor attaches are. We're present in 39 countries where OFW, there's a large concentration of OFWs, such as the Middle East, the Gulf states, so to speak. We're present in all the Gulf states, the Arabian Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, and of course in Asia and in Europe and the Americas. So when a family comes in, one of the things we set up was the One Repatriation Command Center, where usually the most usual form of request for assistance would be helping a loved one who is in trouble or wants to come home. So when the family comes in here and there's a recruitment agency, our regulatory authority over that agency is exercised so that the agency comes into play. And then we send the request for assistance to our labor attaché on site, including the OWA, Admin Arnell's team, also activated on site. So we all come together and work on that particular case until the OFW's needs and interests are addressed.
So would you say that right now, there are no overlapping functions, no redundancies when it comes to having the Department of Migrant Workers and then all the existing agencies that were either absorbed or now attached?
Yeah, there's no overlapping, I think. First of all, right, we always presume that the legislature, when they put up laws or enact laws, are creating policies and laws that can be harmonized. So it's our duty and responsibility really to harmonize all our functions and systems. So the OWA comes in as an attached agency with their own trust fund. The OWA takes care of a private trust fund. It's a 19 billion peso trust fund, which assumes the responsibility of taking care of the contributors to that trust fund. Okay, so the OWA handles welfare and other programs such as livelihood and scholarship. So DMW comes in as the overarching policy and welfare, primary welfare agency. That's the exact term under our law, as a primary welfare agency to lead and to guide and work closely with the OWA. So a classic example would be the returning workers from Israel and Lebanon. There's conflict in that part of the world. And when they come home, when we help them on site, our labor attaché who heads our posts works hand in hand with the OWA welfare officer. So as head of post, our labor attaché brings in a team, helps our OFWs until they're repatriated here. And once again, when they arrive, the DMW comes in, as well as the OWA team, to receive those who have been repatriated through our repatriation efforts as well.
For Filipinos like us, can you explain in simple terms like where you're supposed to go for differing concerns? So when is it time to go to OWA and when is it time to go to the DMW or the DFA?
Yes, we're under one agency now. So I would say when you need help about OFWs, it would be the DMW. So go to the DMW if you need help, anything about OFWs.
You have a hotline
yes.
or an online
Yes, we actually have a hotline. At this stage, it's a hotline shared by the OWA. So we have a common hotline, the 1348 hotline. Now, since we also adhere to a single entry approach, and by that I mean when one goes to OWA or the DMW, one gets entertained and not get passed around. So let's say, so it's the DMW, but let's say an OFW goes to OWA and seeks help about any matter. That OFW will be entertained. And whatever matter that OFW or OFW family brings up will be coordinated between us, DMW and OWA. So my answer would be, it would be the DMW, pero kung ang isang pamilya ng OFW would end up going to OWA, that's fine too. Single entry approach. You go to OWA, it's like going to DMW. So that's how we handle things. Hindi na siya pinapasa from OWA to the DMW. Kami na bahala mag-coordinate sa isa't isa.
What if it's a DFA-related concern, like for example, they're abroad and their passport expired?
Yes.
It's okay to also call the
yes.
OWA or DMW?
Yes, of course. We coordinate with our colleagues at the DFA. If it's a non-OFW, for instance, let's say a tourist, then we do the same. We coordinate with the DFA. Technically, it's really the responsibility of the DFA and to handle the interests or issues or concerns of non-OFWs. But we would also refer that person to the DFA. We make sure that there will be no inconvenience, or at least a major inconvenience on the part of that person who is a non-OFW who ends up coming to our offices.
Right now, as you've said, like the contributions of the OFW to the country and to our GDP is really great. In your opinion, Secretary Hans, is the Department of Migrant Workers currently able to do enough to make sure that we protect the rights of Filipino migrant workers? But before you answer that question, we'll have to take a short break. At the Forefront, we'll be right back. Welcome back at the Forefront. Secretary Hans, before the break, we were asking you, do you think that the Department of Migrant Workers is able to do enough to protect the rights of migrant workers?
Yes, I think we are at our early stages. We are the youngest department in government. So in our first 2 years in government, we've been setting up shop, so to speak, setting up our offices at central as well as regional offices. But having said that, I mean, 23 years in government, it's always not enough. So there is a part that says, yes, we're doing fine, we're doing what we are tasked to do under the circumstances, but there's so much more to do. We can never be satisfied with the kind of work, with the level of achievements that we've had. We've filled up a big number of positions, but still we are around 30 to 40% still along the way in terms of filling up the posts that we need to fill up, the positions that we need to fill up. Regional offices, we're still in the process because we inherited the POEA format where we have 3 regional centers, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, and the rest are small satellite offices. So we need to have full-fledged regional offices as an ordinary government department would do. We inherited the legal assistance program of Assistance to Nationals program of the DFA. We've been handling a great number of labor cases, around the 60,000 labor cases since that time, and we've been handling around 2,500 court cases since the time that we inherited the legal assistance program of the DFA. We've had a number of convictions of perpetrators of crimes against OFWs. Unfortunately, some OFWs were victims of rape, and for the last 4 or 5 months, we secured 3 convictions of perpetrators of the crimes of rape against OFWs abroad. We're monitoring wrongful death and murder cases. Again, unfortunate that this has happened, but we are on top of the cases that we need to focus on, seeking justice for OFWs abroad. We've sheltered around 2,500 OFWs in our shelters all around the world. We've secured claims in terms of our efforts to have employers pay up to OFWs on a daily basis, around $21.5 million in the cases, the daily cases that we handle on the ground, OFW employers paying up. In the famous Saudi claims case of OFWs who were massively retrenched in the middle 2010s, through the efforts of the president in his meeting with the Royal Crown Prince of Saudi, Mohammed bin Salman, 2 years ago, around 1.95 billion pesos had already been released to around 2,500 claimants, with some more claimants to go, and there's an ongoing second batch. So these are among the efforts we've done. Illegal recruitment and human trafficking, we've shut down 12 establishments this year at midpoint, July, August, as compared to 7 last year. So we've already broken the record last year and years past. In terms of illegal recruitment establishment closures, we've had around 20,000 online takedowns of illegal recruitment posts on Facebook and TikTok. So again, this effort continues. In reintegration, are nearly around 300 million pesos were released to reintegration beneficiaries between OWA and DMW. So we've done so much, but you know, in government we always say half glass full, but there is so much more. There's a pitcher load still that we need to fill up and needs to be done. And the president has definitely given us a clear mandate to go out and render full support, full delivery, gawin ang aming lahat na makakaya para maproteksyonan ng OFWs. That's the mandate from the president.
Well, just listening to you, it seems very overwhelming, the type of concerns that you have to address. They range from legal matters, but also criminal cases. So when we defend or prosecute our overseas workers abroad, Are our lawyers within the Department of Migrant Workers able to appear and also represent abroad in foreign courts?
Yes, yes. We definitely hire lawyers who are local to the practice in the host country. Similar to ours, here in the Philippines, there are strict requirements on whether or not to practice law in various host countries. So we make sure that the lawyers we hire are qualified, are seasoned, are well versed, not just with the language, but the legal language abroad, and are able to deliver justice for our OFWs. When I was in Dubai a few months back, I met 12 OFWs whose cases, ito naman, defense, who have been accused of crimes abroad, and the 12 OFWs I met in Dubai had their cases dismissed or they were acquitted. So I met them, and we're so happy to hear about the news that they have been acquitted through the efforts of our legal counsel abroad. Now, our legal counsel would be external and internal. So we also have in-house lawyers who can provide us on a daily basis with legal advice, as well as catering to walk-in OFWs or OFWs who need help on legal terms on a daily basis.
And that those lawyers' fees are paid by the DMW?
They're paid through what is called an action fund. It's a fund set up under the DMW Charter. Annually, we get a budget from Congress, approved, well, a budget from the President through the DBM, approved by Congress, and finally approved by the President. So it's paid for by a fund called the Action Fund.
Well, I can imagine the costs involved. Just, the lawyers abroad,
Yeah.
that by itself would cost a lot of money. Now it's budget season. Do you think that the DMW has received sufficient funding so far for all its efforts, or do you plan to ask for additional funding next year now that the budget season is here?
Yes, we're going through, you're right, we're going through the budget season. We have around a 5 billion peso budget for 2025. And yes, we will make do. It's not, of course, there's always a desirable figure or a level in terms of the budget, but we will make do with the budget that we have. We're getting around 1.2 billion pesos for our action fund. And we will make do. That will be enough for us to help many OFWs. The Action Fund is, should I say, a fund for OFWs in need or in distress, meaning to say it's contingent upon a case where an OFW becomes distressed. So it's not a fund that caters to all kinds of OFWs. There's a specific target set of OFWs there. So what I'm saying is, it all depends on the number of distressed workers that come in on a yearly basis. So it's contingent to that.
Mm-hmm. Secretary Hans, you've served under 4 presidents already. Based on what you've seen so far, who among the presidents had the most support for migrant workers?
I think each president has been fully aware of the contribution of OFWs to the economy, to be fair. But let me point out President Bongbong. He is an OFW president. He has an overwhelming mandate from OFWs during the elections. Even before the elections, we already felt, should I say, the electricity and the excitement he generated from OFWs even during his campaign. Of course, I was an observer then, being part of government. And now, he is very mindful of OFW welfare and concerns. Everywhere we go, when he gathers the Filipino communities, he has a sense of being a rock star. He's always warmly received and welcomed along with the First Lady. The First Lady is there too. He has should I say, a simple yet very, very significant approach to helping OFWs, which is, of course, ensuring that their rights, basic human rights and employment rights are respected, but also a developmental approach. So that he has given us the mandate, for instance, to talk to host countries alongside the DFA and other government agencies. Bearing in mind, of course, the rights of OFWs, but also making sure that host countries, including employers in those host countries, become partners in our nation building and economic efforts. So, for example, when we talk to to host countries of OFWs, we are now mindful in terms of engaging them on how they could improve in our training or education programs. That's why we work hand in hand, for instance, with Chair Popoy de Vera and the CHED, Commission on Higher Education. In the area of health workers, we work closely with Sec Ted Arbosa in making sure that it's not just a matter of host countries recruiting our workers or foreign country employers recruiting our workers, but also in the manner of these countries and foreign employers giving back, coordinating, partnering in terms of training, education, and investments to our country, so that we make sure that our labor market here also establishes a significant talent pool. So in other words, addressing the matter on brain drain, but also brain gain, because everywhere we go, the President says, please come home, please invest to our Filipino communities, please partake in the economic development and economic development programs in the Bagong Pilipinas. So we are working now, building on working closely with diaspora, with our diaspora abroad, with our Filipino communities, in terms of how we could partner in terms of harnessing their talent, their skills. One example would be nurses who have vast foreign experience, working experience abroad in hospitals, in terms of how they could teach in our masteral programs here in universities. So these are efforts that are currently being undertaken, and so it's a combined rights-based as well as a developmental approach.
The law that created the Department of Migrant Workers was signed by former President Duterte back in 2021. And now it's been 3 years since the law was enacted, and we have, as you said, like the Department of Migrant Workers now at its early stages. For OFWs and Filipinos in general, what can you say is the major change that they can expect from how things were being done before to now having this department?
Yes, I think the major change would be a more direct connection between us and the OFWs and their families. So yet another example would be our effort these days to set up OFW help desks, not just on the provincial or municipal city levels, but down to the barangay levels. We're working closely with the ILG Secretary Ben-Hur Abalos along these lines. So setting up of hotlines and centers. Last few days, we've been celebrating the first year of the Bagong Pilipinas Servicio Fair, major program of the President with the Speaker Martin Romualdez. And the effort there entails bringing our services closer to the people. In fact, yung linya is kami ang lalapit sa inyo para magsilbi. So that's one, definitely. We have more centers where to operate. Yesterday you had Admin Arnell Ignasio, and we had the OFW lounges actually that had been opened. Let me just share that when that OFW lounge was opened, I think last July 19th, that was around the same time as the power outage at the airport. And the clear directive of the President then was to make sure that the OFW lounge will cater to the needs of the OFWs at the airport, and more so during that time. Tamang-tama yung pagbukas ng lounge at the same time as the power outage incident at the airport. And Admin Arnell and I were there that entire weekend, and we catered to around 3,000 OFWs during that entire weekend, during that power outage incident, who were properly taken to the lounge where they comfortably sat and were fed until their respective airline travel issues were addressed. So there is a more, should I say, personalized, direct touch that we have with the emergency effort. For instance, what's going on, what happened in Sudan, and what's happening now in the Middle East. In Sudan, Secretary Toots Ople herself went there. I had the honor of joining the good Secretary Ople down at the Egypt-Sudan border to receive the Sudan OFWs coming from Sudan, crossing over into Egypt and flying them home. 19-20-hour bus ride from Cairo, from the Egypt-Sudan border up north to Cairo. Here in Israel and the Middle East, the current conflict, the president, since day one, when it happened, immediately gave marching orders and the directive to make sure that everybody is safe and that they are safely brought home. So we've had a free repatriation program and repatriation assistance post-arrival program for, last 10 months or so. Another thing, the president said those who are directly affected, seafarers who are affected by the current Red Sea attacks by the Houthi rebels, make sure that they're taken care of and that distressed families also taken care of. Sabi niya, make sure that the families are well supported and assisted. So we're doing all these things right now to make sure that it's a government, the president, under the president leadership, that leads with a heart and at the same time a commitment to deliver solid delivery of services.
It sounds like, as you said, we have a president that is what you call an OFW president, meaning he's really concerned for the OFWs. As the Secretary of the DMW, how do you ensure that all of these benefits and protections are institutionalized and not subject to an administration change? So for example, if we have a president that the focus is a bit different or might not be as concentrated for OFWs, would there be any changes in terms of funding support or, like you said, like that immediate sense of urgency for when there's like a conflict abroad or some type of emergency for OFWs?
Well, of course, at the administrative level, all of those things I mentioned in the bureaucracy, they're always supported by administrative issuances from my side for budgetary purposes, right? So from an administrative level, they're all, should I say, cast in stone at the DMW level, if there's such a thing, if I may say so. We're also working closely with the Speaker and the Senate President. I had a chat with the Speaker Cheese, Senate President Cheese and Speaker Martin just a couple of days ago. And we're working closely with them. One example, although I don't mean to preempt any announcement, Speaker Martin asked us to look into the possible legislation for senior OFWs. So we're working closely with the legislators along these lines. OFWs who are seniors who have come home, their task or job is done abroad and they come home. So we seek to help them without preempting any major announcement along these lines. This is just one example of the things we're trying to do. So of course, legislation is that which really truly cast our endeavors in stone. But I think it really starts with the political will. And when I say political will, serving with our minds and our hearts, and that's coming from the president.
Mm-hmm. Secretary Hans, I have some friends that work abroad, and I would even consider them like expat level abroad. They surely make more money than I do, but they always joke, well, I'm an OFW, so even in terms of process for departing, the documentation they have, they're also OFWs by definition. Do you see also some issues or concerns coming from what we call professionals, like we have engineers, architects, doctors that are also OFWs? Do they also tend to need the type of assistance that are offered by the DMW?
Yes, the major form of assistance that we could give to should I say, the higher skilled OFWs, such as professionals, technical workers, would be making it easy for them to go through the government processes. There's a requirement, okay, so there's a requirement to license a recruitment agency, to accredit a foreign employer, and to document a worker. That's the three-pronged bureaucratic set of processes that we have. For documentation of workers through what is called an OEC, or which is employment certificate, that process must be made easy for those who don't need as much protection and guidance and support as, say, the more vulnerable sets of workers. So for the professionals and technical workers, it's imperative, and this is a presidential directive as well, to make it easy for them. Right now, we have an electronic system. And this electronic system over the years has benefited, for the last 7-8 years, has generated around 8 to 9 million electronic OECs. And you will notice that pretty much at DMW. There is lesser foot traffic as compared to the past years. And believe me, I've seen the years when we were all filled up at the lobby. But for the last 8 years or so, that system has been developed. Maybe 8 to 10 years or so, that system has been developed. So that now the President's directive is to further enhance the digitalization process. During Sec Tuts's time, she developed an OFW Pass system through a smartphone app. So that's what we're currently working on. There was a pilot run during Secretary Tuts's time. We're working with the DICT now to perfect that system. So we will make it even easier. We've also aligned ourselves with the other agencies. Yung e-travel system ng agencies, di ba? When we go through, we used to go through those written departure and arrival cards when we travel. That's all electronic through the e-travel approach.
Yes, yes.
So we're aligned to that e-travel approach right now, so that our database is connected to the e-travel database of immigration. So the Bureau of Immigration has further enhanced the partnership we've had over the years, and our Bureau of Immigration now has a better sense of, through the departure arrival card system and the passporting system of the DFA, better sense of who the documented OFWs are. So, simple scan ng passport at passport control by the immigration officer. Pag nag-scan ng passport, lalabas na yung immigration data to the left, to the right, OFW data.
Oh, so it's really
Kita
all
na.
integrated.
Kita
yeah.
na. And the next step, as I mentioned, President's directive, is to put that on a smartphone, and that's what we're trying to do. We're working on that, and hopefully by the end of the year, we will have that OFW Pass smartphone facility.
Well, Secretary Hans, if you were given an opportunity to talk to President Bongbong Marcos right now, what request would you ask of him for the Department of Migrant Workers? But before you answer that question, we'll take a short break. At the forefront, we'll be right back. Welcome back at the forefront. Secretary Hans, we were asking you earlier, if you were given an opportunity to talk to President Bongbong Marcos right now, what would you ask of him for the Department of Migrant Workers?
Well, I just had a conversation with the President the other day, and well, it's truly an honor to be serving under his administration. So my response to that would be sort of JFK-esque, which is I won't ask him what I would need, but rather I would ask him how else can I better serve his administration. And the President and I have always had an open line of communication. So I share with him our endeavors, our programs and services, and he in turn will give me his sound advice. So it's always that way, and I seek his approval when we need to do something. But again, it's always his mandate and his line of communication and thought has always been to protect, to empower, to promote the welfare of OFW. So the marching orders from him are very, very clear. So I would sort of reverse that question and just say, Mr. President, how else can I better serve our OFWs under your leadership?
Were you friends with President Bongbong Marcos before, or any member of his family prior to being appointed?
Well, I had not known the president before. That's why it makes it doubly fortunate for me to serve under his leadership. And then again, I've believed in his advocacy and his determination to serve our dear OFWs, OFW families. I know his track record, of course, when he was a legislator and a governor. So I'm very well familiar of his track record in terms of helping our dear OFWs. So really, it comes as no surprise to me in terms of his strong advocacy for OFWs. And again, I'm honored to be serving under his leadership.
Your predecessor was Secretary Toots Ople,
Yes.
who was the first person that President Bongbong Marcos appointed for this post. How was your relationship with, well, it's unfortunate we lost Secretary Toots Ople untimely,
Yes.
in an untimely manner, but how was your relationship?
Yes. Actually, it was Sec Toots who introduced me to the president. Sec Toots is a dear friend. We've known each other for a couple of decades and worked closely. It was not just a simple friendship, it was a friendship that was rooted in a deep advocacy, anti-illegal recruitment, anti-human trafficking, serving our OFWs. We saw eye to eye in terms of serving our OFWs, especially domestic workers, the most vulnerable skill set. All the time, it was unconditional in terms of our advocacy, Sec Toots and I. She was unconditional in terms of how she saw service to OFWs. There would be those who would say, may mga ilan dyan, pasaway. But she always had that drive. OFWs, especially those in need, distress, really needed to be helped. And not just OFWs, as I mentioned, even OFW families. So when she was in her NGO days at Blas Ople Center, we worked very closely on so
were
many
able
cases.
to work with her father, Blas Ople, as well?
No, I had an opportunity to meet Blas when I was in the Bureau of Labor Relations in 2002, 2003. I had the good fortune, two Dole officials, Ms. Minda Padilla and Ms. Lily Pineda, introduced me to Blas in his Senate office at the time, and I was telling Sec Toots of that meeting. I was just so overwhelmed. I was so speechless. You know, he's a big guy and sort of a hulking figure, and I couldn't say anything. I was starstruck when I met Blas. 2002, 2003. I needed to interview him or meet him for a Labor Day preparation event.
Secretary Hans, how did you even end up in government service? You've been serving the government for 23 years now. Did you start in private practice? How did you start in government?
I started as a lawyer for a non-government agency organization called Saligan. It's an Ateneo-based agency or NGO, and there I had clients who were workers, unions, and urban poor. In fact, it's sort of more with the urban poor sector at the time. So we help people's organizations, empower them, set up their respective communities, and join them in their advocacy for what we call housing and eviction rights. Many urban poor communities were victims of illegal demolitions and lack of due process in terms of the way they were evicted. So we help them along those lines.
Right now, because it sounds like you're so busy with all the things that you have to manage for the Department of Migrant Workers, how do you spend your free time, if any?
Oh, it's always been a challenge, no? Working, you were in government once, it's always been a challenge to achieve work-life balance, as they call it. Really, well, since the pandemic, 2020, where I worked almost 24/7, I was at OWA at that time. It's really been non-stop. Tuloy-tuloy lang siya from 2020. Even Sec Toots pointed out to me one time, sabi niya, parang hindi ka nagpahinga since 2020. I said, yes, I'm just going on and on. And yes, it's been a challenge, wife and daughter, and they've been very, very understanding. But at the same time, just like any other government official, I'm sure many more like me in government go through the same experience. We have daily thoughts about spending more time with our loved ones, in my case, wife and daughter. We just try to make the most of the quality time, I suppose. It sounds cliche, but making sure I spend the most time with them, although my daughter would be prone to say, you're looking at your phone again. My daughter's old enough not to point these things out. But I really try my best to spend more quality time with my girls, my wife and daughter.
Do you plan to stay in government service until you retire, or any plans of entering politics or going back to private sector?
Politics, no. Politics has never been on my mind. I usually tell people, I would even lose an election in my own house.
With only 2 voters, your wife and your daughter.
The moms are the presidents of every household, and I would even lose an election there. And no, it's not been on my mind in terms of running. Yes, retirement is in the future. I'm 56. Can you believe? I started as a young gun in the bureaucracy. And now I'm looking at the horizon, and there's the twilight. I can see it. Optional retirement at 60 and mandatory at 65. So yes, that's sort of in the cards already, but still far off.
Mm-mm. Well, maybe Secretary Hans, we can end with you giving a message to the OFWs that you now have to all take care of.
Yes, nakakasiguro po kayo ng aming serbisyo at suporta under the leadership of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Tayo po ay patuloy na magbibigay ng walang humpay na serbisyo, tapat at walang humpay na serbisyo. Walang bahid ng korupsyon, at kung meron pong reklamo, please ilapit nyo lang po sa akin at tutugunan natin. We are, as I mentioned, striving to bring ourselves closer. Kung pwede lang araw-araw kaming naroon physically, literally, at nakikinig sa inyo, ay gagawin po namin yon. May mandate ang ating Pangulo na makipag-usap, makipagpulong sa inyo para malaman ang inyong mga sentimiento. So we have hotlines and programs and services. 1348, I always need to mention that, and thank Admin Arnell in the process, because it's an OWA-based hotline that is co-shared. Maganda rin para isa lang, 1348 hotline para magdulog po kayo. At bukas ang laming linya. Ang Department of Migrant Workers has a web page and a Facebook page. Dumulog lang po kayo doon. At konting kahilingan din ng pag-uunawa kung may mga bagay pa na areas that need improvement. Pero I'm sure nandiyan dyan din naman kayo para i-point out o itawag pansin sa amin yon, at tutugunan din po namin yung mga areas of improvement na you will point out to us. So yun na lamang po. Take care, everyone, and God bless.
Thank you so much, Secretary Hans Cacdac. You truly have a lot on your plate, so thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Having served most of his career handling labor-related concerns, Secretary Hans Leo Cacdac is a perfect fit for the DMW. As a newly formed department, the challenges that he and the DMW face are quite formidable. Much work is needed to safeguard the rights of OFWs and ensure the sustainability of overseas employment. Be timely informed, be insightful of the news. Always stay at the forefront. Join us again tomorrow for meaningful conversations that would help you form an objective personal opinion. This is Attorney Karen Jimeno. Thank you for spending your hour with us.